Move myself up a little bit, man. Welcome everybody back to a Friday. Let me get my hood down. A Friday Lions mock draft. Even though, that's only part of today's episode. This is kind of a discussion day following our creator mock draft. We're less than a week from the draft. Things are happening so fast. I'm kind of working on my rankings behind the scenes a little bit, trying to put those, finalize those, figure out where I want guys, just all like the little extra stuff. Seeing how far I can get with certain players at certain positions before this thing happens, because next week's going to be a mess. So it's kind of like, yeah, get this thing done by Sunday. So that's where I'm at right now. But um, man, I think yesterday going through the presser for Brad Holmes was great. We haven't talked about that over here on Bleacher Report very much. I think a lot of the takeaways were a little bit more Brad Holmes, like he wasn't going to tell us anything exactly, but he did emphasize, like, look, bro, we're going best player available. I think we broke down the explanation for that pretty well. I did walk away feeling like receiver was going to be a draft pick at some point, maybe multiple, maybe one. But I know Brad said it'd be nice to get a younger at that position. So I expect that at some point. If I was guessing, but also, you do have undrafted free agency, so there's that too. And they do have some youth there, which makes it interesting because Ronnie Bell is not an old receiver. If Antoine Green's around, he's not an old receiver. So I expect they're going to draft someone, but we'll see how that plays out. I expect that they will at some point, just kind of based on what he said. Those are really the main two takeaways. And the Za'Darius Smith situation, not having contact, I don't think he's going to be back as a Lion. And then, of course, he was just bombarded with the edge rusher questions. That's like all the conversation. That said, though, today, we've done a lot of these mock drafts, and I've talked about players that I like, right? Because I can explain those and that kind of thing, like guys that I like in the draft, a little bit less of kind of the predictive style as a whole. But today I wanted to kind of get a really nice blend of both, I think. Okay. There's not a lot of picks in this mock draft today. I'm calling it a trade back mock draft. That sounds weird, but basically we're trading back early in this draft. We're going to try to move out. Now we're using PFF. Now that said, though, trading back, the conversation is there for the back of the first round, right? There's going to be multiple teams that would probably like to do that. I don't know if there's going to be any interest in doing that. And that's what I wanted to do today because we've traded up a lot. I moved up yesterday in the move that we made. So today I wanted to move back and kind of look at it from a different perspective. Let's go through a mock with the trade back. Now, we've done a few of those because we've done a lot of mocks. We've done a few of those, and typically I end up with an offensive lineman. Hey, what's up, y'all? I see y'all. We typically walk away with an offensive lineman. So, I wanted to change it up today, but I also wanted to put some flavor on it of kind of where I'm sensing the Lions, some of the guys the Lions may like, right? Maybe that is from a visit, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a balance of both here, but there's still a ton of movement in today's mock draft that we're going to talk about because that's just how we do it when you have a simulator. You just move a ton because, again, the guys are ranked in a spot that they're typically going to go about that area. So if you want the guy, you better move around and go get him. If you sit where you are, there's not a good chance that someone's going to surprise you and fall. They're probably going around their ranking. So that said, let's jump right into it. This is an interesting one because as mentioned, like it's not like my predictive mock that'll happen right before the draft. I'll put one of those out where I'm just guessing every pick the Lions make. It's not that necessarily. It's not to that extent, but it has a trace of that. Okay, there's a scent of that. I think in today's mock draft where it's like, okay, I like these players. Maybe I don't love them as much, and maybe that wouldn't have been my top choice based on what the board was available. But I do think the Lions. I could see the path for them really liking this guy. And today's a little bit different because yesterday we had talked about like Jahad Campbell and how I thought like, okay, that would make a lot of sense for the Lions, a guy like that. But with their mock simulator, especially if you're trading back and you're not going up, you're not getting Jahad Campbell. Okay. So a guy like that's like, yeah, Jahdae Barrett, like these aren't guys that you're going to land on their simulator if you don't move up. That said, though, in real life, I think it's possible. Malachi Starks, I think it's possible that one of those three at very least get into maybe a range where you could jump up a few spots to go make it happen. But also at the same time, they could be there, right? They could be there. And then I think a guy like Derek Harmon's a very interesting conversation as well. I think if we just want to have that conversation about a guy that I think is super interesting, and I think next week or maybe even today, it's interesting to have that conversation about like Derek Harmon. Does he make a ton of sense, right? Does one of these interior defense linemen make a ton of sense? I think that's an interesting conversation as well because you may not feel as comfy jumping out of your spot if you want to grab a Kenneth Grant if he gets there, or a Derek Carmen, like that kind of thing. You may not feel as comfy. You might just have to sit and just pick. So that would just be your decision. So today we're going to trade back, but I did it a little bit different than what you're going to expect. So let me throw this thing on the screen. When I say trade back, you're probably expecting that, okay, this guy, he just traded back to with a 28 pick, but that's not what I did. I did a little bit differently. Give me 1 second, actually, because on Bleacher Report, it's not showing the image. So I think I have to refresh to show the image. So bear with me, Bleacher Report. Once I got to refresh the page, that way the image actually shows up. So give me 1 second here. All right. Give me 1 second. Let me pop this thing back up. There we go. Okay. I'm mirrored. That's cool. That's cool. All right, now it should show up. It's like a glitch. But okay, now I got it. Okay, we're good. We're back. We're on. All right, let's do this thing. So let's go to our trade back mock. We pop it up on the screen. Bam. Just like that. We're gonna spoil it all at once because that's how this works. So here we go. Here's the trade back mock draft. Now, as mentioned, there's some players on here that I think would make a lot of sense for the Lions, and it wouldn't surprise me if they would be interested in these guys. And there's that flavor of both. Like, okay, I like some of these guys. I think they could like some of these guys as well. Now, as you can see, there's not a lot of draft picks happening, which I'm not against that being the case. I've talked about this. Like, I don't need all the picks towards 200. Because at that point, I think a lot of times, and I do it too, we get to these back end of these mock drafts and we're doing these mocks and you just start drafting guys to fill positions of need. You're like, let me grab that safety. Let me get that linebacker. Let me get that tight end. Like you're just grabbing guys or an interior offensive lineman. Let me just grab a guy, an interior defensive lineman that kind of makes sense. I'm not really in the business of doing that in real life. Like I would be cool if the Lions just didn't do that. And they were like, yo, we can go limited picks here. Let's get our guys. Let's get out. And in this case, I did a little different because initially I was going to come in and like, all right, let me move back out of 28. The problem was the simulator doesn't really give much interest there. And I don't think going back to like 40 is maybe the best idea. It would probably be one of those teams looking for a quarterback. So I didn't constantly get an offer at that spot. So instead, as I was thinking about it, right, we're talking about trading out. We're talking about trading out, acquiring more picks. It felt like listening to Brad yesterday, trading out, acquiring more picks is the preferred method, of course, without knowing what the board looks like. If you just told me like, take any shot of guess, like who you think is going to be on the board, what would you do? Trade up, trade down? And like, yeah, I'd probably trade down in most situations. Acquiring more picks makes more sense for us. So in that case, thinking about the one, there could be some real unlikelihood of being able to get out, but also at the same time, if I can't get an offer, what about trading out of 60? What about trading out of 60? Because I think the meat of the edge rusher class is this second round, right? It's kind of the second round, top second round, end of first round, that kind of. That's where all these names are kind of bunched together, going to fall in kind of this same bracket. And I do think there's a drop off eventually when you get to some of these players. So for me, the mindset there was like, okay, if I try to move out of 60, then at this spot, let me get a guy that, okay, I'm not, because I'm gonna move out of 60. I want to make sure I get a guy that I feel like kind of fall into that category as one of these top players at his position. And I'm gonna throw Nick Scorton in here. Now, if you see my edge rankings, this is not like my top edge rusher. I think he was 9 on my rankings, so clearly he's not towards the top here. And the problem that I have with this is I don't think there's a trait that I believe is special outside of one thing, which is really interesting, which I want to talk about. And it's not like a trait that you would typically go to and see like, oh, we're drafting him because of this. But I do think it's an area of his game that does make him separate himself. Of course, we know kind of the background of Nick Scorton as well. I actually had some clips today I was going to show him, but let me see if I can grab those while we're talking. But anyways, Nick Scorton, 3-year player, young player. So the youth there, that's something that's always, I think, nice to have, especially when you consider that he has as much production as he has as well, where you're already seeing the production. He's a young player, so those two things kind of already come together. But it's also then the change of body type, right? We saw him look different in Purdue versus when he transferred to A&M, bulked up a little bit. And I know the conversation is like, yo, they didn't use him right. They shouldn't have bulked him up. I actually don't necessarily disagree with what A&M did. I don't think it was maybe the wrong move, but I think play style wise, while he carries the weight really well, which I think that we saw with Texas A&M, and he was still able to maintain some of the movement skills, which we're going to talk about because that's the trait that to me separates him. I don't think that he plays as the most explosive or the transition and speed to power. I don't think that's where he's great. Like you may think of his body type, like, oh, that's where he's gonna cook people right there. So yeah, keep him a little bit like 255, 260, keep him in that body type, and let him just run guys over. That doesn't feel like his game when you watch him. And if that was his game, he'd be way higher for me. That doesn't feel like his game. So I actually didn't hate the fact they put more weight on him. I think it opens up flexibility. He played inside the tackles, as we saw at times with Texas A&M, and then with Purdue, he was a stand-up outside linebacker, a big stand-up outside linebacker. That's what he was. But I think the trait that carries the weight or carries the momentum for him at a spot like this, there's a couple, but it's first off the agility. It's the agility / body control. And that's not like a thing that you're like, man, when we get our edge rusher, he's going to have the best body control, and that's going to put him at number 1. Like, that's probably not the category that puts you at 1, right? But it is a positional factor that I do take into account with these edge rushers, and it is something that Aiden Hutchinson had in flying colors was his body control, his movement skills, his agility for a guy at his size. His agility was insane. I'm not saying Scorton's on that level, but for a guy that was built like that, if you watch Scorton this past year, at his size, the way that he moved and he could change directions and he could shake guys at the top of his rush, and you watch him get out into the flats and you watch him move in space and you're like, man, this guy's pretty darn agile for a dude that big. And it was actually a great reminder for me because today I went back and I was like, let me kind of re-up on Nick Scourton. Let me watch some games I haven't watched. Bam. Let me get a fresh kind of take on this player without even having my notes out. And those are the first couple of things that are hitting my mind. I'm like, yeah, this guy's agile. I pull my notes back and it's like, yep, that's where I gave him a really strong grade. So everything's consistent there for me on that side. So that's the first thing. That's the one trait where if there is a trait for me that would like stand out. I think he's also a very smart player for a 3-year player. I think he's one of the smartest players. He's got a really nice motor to his game as well. And to me, he's still an edge that I really like. Again, it's just a lot. There's a lot of tightness within this group here. I think the body size, the length of the 33 inches is good, right? It's not outstanding, but it's good. I could see where the Lions would be interested in a Nick Scourton type, right? I think there's development needs to be needed. Again, speed to power could improve. Even just the pass rush plan could improve. Like if you watch him against Texas, when you see him work against Cameron Williams, you're like, man, there's a lot of success here. You see him flip to the left tackle, and you're like, oh, there's not much success here. So it was a completely different ball game when you saw him do things like that. I think hand usage is a big part of this, connecting his hands, improving that as a whole, shedding blocks for a guy at his build. You want to see a little bit more of that pop. You want to see more of that jolt rather than, and it's not that he's not powerful. It's not that he can't play behind the line of scrimmage. It's not that he can't push tight ends into the backfield because he does all of those things. It's just consistency with his hands and being more of a technician at the point of attack. But the value and the positive to that is that, yeah, he's a 3-year player. All right, we're not talking about a 6-year senior and you're like, oh man, his hands though. That would be a little more concerning. But for Nick Scourton, it's a little bit different because of the circumstance here. So yeah, it's not like he'd be my top edge on the board based on what was available to me. But the more I look at it, I think he makes a lot of sense for the Lions. It wouldn't surprise me if they did this. I think that it feels like from the outside perspective, I don't know him at all personally, but it feels like from an outside perspective that character-wise, the traits, like all of those things feel like they would check because he plays so hard, because of what he's done in the past, because of his production, because of transferring and doing what he did. It all feels like this would be a guy that most teams would value. He's a smart player. Most teams would like a guy like this. So I would assume that he's going to be on the Lions' radar at some point. It's just finding the right value for that. And if I could have moved out and traded and still got him, maybe I could have did that instead. But in this case, I couldn't. And their simulator, really, you don't want to do that because he's probably going to be gone. So in this case, that's why I decided to change it up. So let me move back in the second round. So Nick Scourton's the first pick. Then this is where things get interesting. So again, would he be my top linebacker at the spot? No, because on their simulator, Demetrius Knight typically falls here. Why? I have no idea, but he does. So for a guy like me, Demetrius Knight would be my top linebacker in that case, right? I love Demetrius Knight. He's still my top graded linebacker. That said, though, Chris Paul Jr., Lions have met with, and I could feel the Lions fit. Like, I can feel it. So this is one where, like, I don't want to personally overvalue him or overrate him how I have him graded initially because I know that I feel like the Lions are interested in the player. But I also can't help. But when we look at these mocks, we're getting close to the draft. They're kind of trying to dial it in, which is kind of what we're doing today slightly. The fit makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to me, right? All of those things make sense. I thought that he had a potential to be better the more he's working on the ball. And I've said this a few times. The Lions' value in those second level players, to me, it's heavy for guys that can work up and down. Guys that can go stand on the ball, guys that can play off ball, guys go Mike and Will. I think that flexibility is really valuable. And it's not just putting the label on the player. It's also more so to me about the skill set that allows him to do that, right? There's a football intelligence aspect to that, but there's also a stoutness that you have to play with, right? You guy that's kind of flimsy at the point of attack, you're getting pushed around. And if you're not, you may have some value to be able to move up. You can stand in today's NFL for a guy like Chris Paul, who isn't the biggest linebacker, right? Could even look to fill out his frame a little bit. He's kind of built like a board right now, but he's got some real stoutness. I think his shed needs work, but he's stout at the point of attack. And that's not something you find a ton unless a guy's like, hey, he's 245, but he's not that long. He doesn't really move that well. Like, yeah, some of those dudes will be stout, but he's got a little bit of mix of both. For a guy that's not built like that, but he has some of that athletic trait to his game. So that allows for flexibility. I like him on the ball because I like him being able to play downhill. I like him in pursuit on run plays, which opens up kind of the will linebacker upside as well. And the stoutness can open up, kicking him back to handling blocks at the point of attack. So all the versatility kind of connects here. And then when it comes to coverage, while I don't think he's outstanding here either, the best category for me in coverage with him was man coverage. I thought that where he fit best was you put him in man coverage because to me, he was a guy that had a skill set where it's not like, oh, I'm going to feel like this is my tight end stopper. Let's just get the tight end stopper on the field. Like that's not how I'm looking at him. But for what we have and for the length that you can also add with this pick, and we saw specifically how much Malcolm Rodriguez has really improved in this area. Malcolm Rodriguez has gotten so much better in coverage, but he was really good in coverage as he came in. There's just kind of like some limitations that that you have when you look at a guy like Malcolm Rodriguez, right? Some limitations in what he can actually do in coverage, but what he does well, he does really well. And I think last year he took another step forward, honestly, just in terms of what he would do in man-to-man coverage. But to me, his value actually comes more so in man coverage. I think he's good in man coverage. I think he runs with a lot of discipline in man coverage. I think you can deal with running backs, be pretty comfortable there. And I think about an Alex Anzalone. I think about the future and preparing for that. And this would be a piece that would at least allow you to understand that. So for me, again, wouldn't be my top guy, right? Kind of like we just talked about with Scourton. But I also look at it from the perspective of he makes sense. He does make sense. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. So kind of blending those two things together makes sense. Now, this is one that I have no idea if the Lions are interested in or not, but I know that I'm interested in this player. And look, interior offensive line, it's not a great group. All right. Maybe that's the best. It's not. It's not a great group. It feels like it becomes shallow very fast, which I think also allows the opportunity for offensive linemen to fly off the board and get to a point where you're like, oh man, we ran out of guys here. Like that could happen pretty darn quickly. So, there's guys that looked at as day 3, dude, like back into day 3 that I think are top 10 interior offensive linemen. That says it all. Like, it's like, all right, this is maybe not the best interior offensive line group, right? There's a lot of like, okay, can we put him here? Can we move him around? But for me, Wyatt Millam, I think he was ranked I think I had him as number 5 as my interior offensive lineman, even though he played, tackle for West Virginia. I like the transition to guard, even though he's a little bit on the taller side. I think that's going to work best for him at the NFL, is just allowing him to kind of kick back inside. I think it'll limit some of the concerns as well. I think he's really above average in kind of everything. And then specifically, it's the hand usage, sustainability, where I think that he's good. And that fits the Lions. That fits the Lions offense, being a movement piece, a guy that can kind of push guys out of the pile a little bit, play with real physicality, move guys around as a run blocker, maybe open up some scheme flexibility, the 32+ inch arms, which isn't great on the outside, but it's fine on the interior at 6'6", 313. So I think putting him at guard with potentially having textile flexibility is fine, but he's one of my favorite interior offensive line because it's not a great group. And I think at this point, you could see where we made some trades again because they're bored. So I end up having to jump up a little bit here with the Rams. I don't know what this would cost. You can also see with Kansas City, I had to throw in a future 7th, which is like, okay, I didn't want to do that, but I kind of had to try to get the value aligned up a little bit better. So that's why we ultimately threw that in. So those are the first 3 picks. Now the last 2 picks, they're a little bit different. But yeah, they should be eye-catching because let's talk about them. So first off, we go Harold Fannin Jr. I do think the Lions will take a receiver at some point. And because of the amount of picks that we used to move around, well, we couldn't really do that. But Harold Fannin is a piece. And I do think the Lions, I've thought this for hey, getting a guy that can add a receiving element to your offense, a guy behind Sam Laporta would be ideal. I don't think Fannin's going to fall this far realistically. And I think when you look at his testing scores, as much as the concern about how he moves in drills, it doesn't really showcase in his actual scores. He scores pretty well. I don't think he's going to fall this far, right? You were dominant against, your best competition this past season. And if he does fall this far, which we've seen some of the best tight ends in football have fallen this far, now all of a sudden it becomes kind of a potential value idea for the Lions. And that's ultimately why I decided to make this move that I did to go up a few spots with the LA Rams to get this thing done, because I know the Rams could be looking at a tight end as well. And I think that it'd be a really good spot for him because of what the Lions already have. I actually think the value of Brock Wright shines with a guy like Harold Fannin, which makes this more interesting to me. I feel like if we didn't have a Brock Wright, this pick may be less interesting. But because I have my inline blocker that I'm comfortable with, can kind of move to different positions, and it's like, all right, I kind of know what his role is. He's not going to do as much in the pass game, but we run some flats, things like that. Actually makes Fannin more interesting because I've never had an issue with Fannin's willingness to block. I've never had an issue with his toughness, his ability to engage guys, kind of run through contact. I've never had an issue with that. He's in line in different spots. He's played fullback, right? He's been put in different positions. I've always kind of liked him in space when he's gotten out and blocked. So I've never had an issue with he's not tough enough to block. He plays with some real bend to his game. There's some control there. So I never had an issue with that. That may not be his strong suit, just in terms of what he is. But remember, Laporta had those knocks on him too. People didn't think he was a block. He's an awesome blocker with the Lions. So it's about finding those qualities. And I do think that while that's probably not his best strong suit, because what you want him to do is catch passes, Harold Fannin also connects a lot of boxes there as well, because now he gives you a marriage between, okay, we know that he does really good things after the catch. We know that he led college football in forced missed tackles, even though I don't think he always looks like that guy, but he did this past season. He could be a big play threat, but I love the hands. And that's something that I also, from tight end, right? You want reliability. Shane Zylstra, when he was on the same page with Goff, it was reliability, it was consistency. You knew where he was going to be. I get some of that with Fannin potentially. It's like, okay, he's going to catch the ball. I think he had a 3.3% drop rate this past season. But if you watch his technique, it's really confident. If anything, he almost speeds it up a little bit too fast at times. I'm like, all right, maybe we slow this down a little bit. But he's confident. He kind of moves away from traffic when the ball's in the air to make sure that, he's bringing down, but he's not taking the brunt of the hit. He has that kind of feel with the ball in the air. And then, of course, he opens up a very complex route tree. And if you think about where I always go back to Shane, because it's really what he can bring to the table that Brock doesn't. What Brock doesn't bring as a receiving threat is kind of what I'm looking for here. And that would be the level 2, level 3, even level 1 after the catch. Brock doesn't do much after the catch. Harold Fannin will. But it's level 2, it's level 3. I get him out a little bit. He's got his own weird style. You see him behind the line of scrimmage. It looks kind of clunky. But I think if you allow him to get down the field a little bit more, that's where you start to open up. It's like, okay, actually, this is where he's really good. Because now you get him in space. Now you get a lot of creativity, some craftiness as he's working through his routes, tries to create leverage. He's hard to kind of deal with at the top of routes. Now you get a little bit of that with really confident hands. And it's like, all right, I think they'll want to add a receiver. But if you told me you had Sam Laporta and Harold Fannin with Brock Wright, that's a really nice tight end room going forward. Of course, people will then get to the conversation of, well, what does this mean for Sam Laporta when his contract comes up? I don't know. That's not why I drafted this piece. I drafted it because it felt like a value. And I honestly, because the more I look at this, the more I think Fannin could go in round 2. And it feels like if you're throwing everybody in round 2, someone's not going to go in round 2. So a guy like this, we've seen really good tight ends fall. We see it almost all the time, really good tight ends fall, unless you're like recognized, oh, that guy's different. And they're like Brock Bowers. Most tight ends fall. So I think it's possible. So with that being said, if he was here, like as much as it would make more sense if I'm trying to go a little bit more of the predictive route this time around, just grab a receiver to be like, there's your receiver. I'm actually kind of interested in this. Medrano. Yeah, let's go to Medrano. I actually don't know how to say his name, so I don't know. Kane Medrano. I think that's right. It's a cool name. Plays next to Carson Schwessinger, which is interesting because actually both these guys are pretty undersized. So Kane Medrano is actually a little bit on the smaller side. He's actually too much on the smaller side, which is a concern here. But no, you know what? This was an interesting one because to kind of wrap this draft, I think the easiest thing for me to do is just take a safety. It's like, all right, let me draft a safety. Let me kind of wrap this thing up. But I'm a fan of Medrano, and I like both the linebackers they have. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Schwessinger, the instincts. I don't know that he fits the lines as much. But then I think about when you get to the 7th round, if a guy like this was sitting there, right, and you still like a lot of those qualities of his game, you know who I thought of? And I don't know that he even felt like physically he was built out like this because I know the Lions want a little bit more stoutness, which is what Chris Paul adds to the team. I thought of Chris Board a little bit. I thought a little bit of Chris Board. Now, you could say the same about Chris Paul in terms of his build as well. Like you could say, that, okay, they kind of fall into a similar tree here. But I felt a little bit like I was looking at a potential, like, okay, at his peak, could he get to a Chris Board type of build? Could he get to a guy like that where it's like, all right, he's not very stout, and you'll see it, and he'll deal with some issues just in terms of his build where he's trying to shed blocks and guy gets hung on too long. But I also think that he plays with better technique, and it almost feels like it's a result of that because of the fact that he's undersized and because he's moved so much, he plays in space. He's much more comfy in space and coverage, but you'll see it like when he enters contact, the way that he locks himself out, the positioning, he's got like a little nuance where he's really sudden right before the entry of the block. So he's really difficult to get a clean latch on. He kind of just dips and slips around blocks. He's very slippery kind of at the second level. And what I like about him is I think the play speed matches. He's a great athlete. He's a little bit undersized. He looks like he looks like a linebacker, but he's like 225. But he can absolutely run down dudes. You'll get him behind the backfield. He's going to chase guys around. People will be concerned about, oh, he has this missed tackle rate. And I think it's a fair concern, but I think it's because of his tackle technique. I don't think that he runs through his tackles as much as he kind of just goes low. It's kind of like Jahdae Barron in some ways, where Barron goes really low. He's undersized. He kind of just goes for the ankles all the time, but he doesn't miss a lot of tackles. Medrano, on the other hand, does miss a lot of tackles, but I think he doesn't really always run through his tackles, which leads to some inconsistency. Plus, he plays really fast and kind of hurt himself a little bit. But the fluidity in coverage, the comfortability to put him out in space, and then I think also that idea of like, all right, could he be a special teamer? I think so. I think he has that toughness. Just because that's not his game is like this powerful piece. I think he would have the toughness there. But at this point, I'm kind of taking a flyer. And I'm taking a flyer to a guy I feel very comfortable with in coverage. I feel comfy with him in zone coverage. He's very loose as a mover. And I think that he's found a way to kind of overcome some of those issues that you would have with his build. And like, I don't know that he actually would get this far. As a blitzer specifically, didn't pop as much to me here, but he's a capable closer. There's other guys that I would probably lean to as a blitzer, like a linebacker from Notre Dame. I like him as a blitzer, but I like Medrano's well-rounded game. So yeah, it's kind of taking a swing here. That's why I was like, you know what? I could go safety, kind of wrap this up with a need, but at the same time, I don't want to force it, and I'm a fan of this guy, so I'm just gonna stick him in here and just be like, we'll figure it out. We'll see what happens. But that's where I really wanted to try to find a balance because I think for most of these spots, like you could argue, okay, linebacker's not even in need, at least like not right now. But we took two of them, and the first one's a little bit different. That one's clearly for the future. Guards obviously in need, so Wyatt Millen fits. Harold Fannin, you say tight end. We don't really need a tight end. We need a receiver. Well, okay, but would you rather take a receiver that you kind of like or a tight end that could be really good as a receiving tight end? And you potentially get a great value there. It's like, all right, I'd lean the tight end in that spot. So, and that's what I did with Kane too. It's like, all right, we'll just see what happens. So, yeah, to me, this is it's just a different way to go about it. I tried to put more of that flavor of going after guys I think the Lions could be interested in a little bit more in today, but it's not the full predictive mock yet. But I do think trading back is ideal for the Lions, but I think this is a different way to look at it is get back in the second round, see what you could potentially acquire for that. And as you see in this one, I think I went back with the Giants, and it wasn't a huge haul from 130 to 105, but that slight move is a lot. In this draft, it's a lot. And obviously I moved back up again, but it's a lot because it ended up giving me my guard. And when you have a guard class that's pretty darn weak, you might need that pick so you can have some flexibility to get back up. And that's why I pulled that off. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it here. So the plan then for next week, we got Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I don't know exactly what we're gonna do Monday. I'm hoping to have my rankings either out Monday or during the weekend. So we'll drop the grades, man. So we'll do that. We'll see how that kind of shakes out. But I think at worst Wednesday, we're gonna aim for a predictive mock draft. Like that's at very least we should have some sort of predictive mock draft dropping on a Wednesday over here on Bleacher Report because it's going to be the day before the draft. So we'll try to fully predict this thing out. But that's why I kind of wanted to kind of get towards that path a little bit today. And we may do our predictive mock without trades. I'm not completely sure. We may just do it without trades. That way there's not as much craziness because there could be a lot of craziness, I think, especially once you get past the first day. The first day actually may be calmer than day 2 and day 3. I could see that being the case because I think everybody's going to be rushing up to try to get in that top 75, top 100. And that could be where the craziness starts versus actually the first round where maybe teams are a little more tame kind of towards the back end. And that wouldn't shock me at all. I think this is the kind of draft that has a little bit of the makings of that being the case into this year's draft. So, yeah, that wraps it up over here on Bleacher Report, man. Shout out to everybody joining. Let me know if you're watching afterwards. Put the grade, comment the grade. Okay, I can see the comments. Comment the grade. Let me know. But this is definitely a different approach than what we did yesterday. We traded up, got Jalen. By the way, people have been feeling that. You know what I mean? People have been feeling that. Okay, they've been feeling that trade up, so that's good. We got a little, improvement of the move that we made yesterday. I feel like everybody was pretty on board with making that kind of move. And also on top of that, the crazy thing is like when you see that and you kind of just hear like all of the noise. Like I don't know what it is. I'm curious to see where Jalen goes because I think the media is way lower on him than the actual draft people will be. There's going to be a little bit of like, well, what position does he fit? But I think it's different because it's not like there's certain positions where the tweener thing could hurt you a little bit more. But I think a guy like Micah helps a player like that. But like dudes that just rush the passer and that's their best trait, I feel like teams are more willing to go after that tweener. Like, okay, we'll do that. So I'm curious to see where he goes. But all the discussion I keep hearing is that he's essentially a lock to be top 10. Maybe he slips outside of that. But if he gets to 16, man, I think we'll be looking back and like, dang, that value was good. I'm just hoping it becomes realistic and he actually does drop. I'm going to wrap it up over here, though. I'll see you guys Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Appreciate y'all joining. We're out. Go Lions. Okay. Chat. I don't do anything with Rad anymore. I know we haven't had Rad on in a minute. I talked to him after our mock draft yesterday. After our mock draft, man. He loved it. He loved the Jalen Walker pick. So I talked to him a little bit after that went down, but I haven't talked to him a ton necessarily. Laporta might be gone soon. I don't think so. Like, I hope not. I mean, we know tough decisions are going to have to be made. So, as much as it can kind of that's where I think this draft is interesting because it's kind of like we were talking about yesterday where, you could point to like, oh, you drafted a linebacker. Now linebacker feels more obvious. Like, oh, yeah, hey, you're replacing Alex. And for me, it would be because Chris Paul isn't as high for me to like be worthy of this pick versus who else was on the board for PFF. But realistically, those guys that are on the board for PFF may not be there. Chris Paul could be the best player on the board at this spot. So that one kind of lines up a little bit more. But like me taking Fannin in this draft didn't have anything to do with Sam Laporta. It didn't even cross my mind. But it would open the flexibility to at least have options, I guess, down the road, assuming he connects. But it didn't even cross my mind. I was pretty locked in. Like, yeah, Harold Fannin, I would just versus a receiver at 102, I feel pretty comfy. And all the receivers I like were essentially gone then. Then it becomes a little bit more of kind of a messy situation. I think Harold Fanning kind of sticks out a little bit more. I think he would stick out a lot more than most receivers available at 102. Given whatever the board looks like, my assumption would be he's going to stand out more if he's sitting at 102 versus a receiver sitting at 102. I think he'll be a guy that you're like, oh, wow, he's still available. I think he's got that kind of talent, and he's still tested well enough to do that. So for me, that was just more so of like, all right, he's not a receiver, but dude's talented, man. And he can get open, he can run routes, and it would be a lot of fun, though. Hey, would that not be a lot of fun versus Mason Taylor? I think I'm more on the Mason Taylor train in terms of definitely who I think is going to go higher is Mason Taylor. I was actually doing some Mason Taylor stuff yesterday. My thing with Mason Taylor is, though, like, I don't know how much I buy of it becoming special. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much I buy into Mason Taylor being able to like be that special as a tight end. I think there's consistency there, but he doesn't really stand out to me. Even the way he separates is fine. It's like, all right, I can see this translating, but nothing stands out as like he's going to be dominant. And I could be wrong on that. Let me see if I can pull my notes real quick. But I don't feel that. I feel a little bit more comfortable, like, okay, this is going to work. And I think teams will buy into that. Like, I think he'd fit pretty much anywhere. He'll work pretty much anywhere. And he has the bloodlines, which will help him as well. But I also feel like Harold Fannin actually does have some juice. And I feel more comfortable with Taylor, but I think Fannin has more juice to potentially become something special as a receiving option. So that's kind of the difference for me. As a blocker, I thought he was okay, but it wasn't like he was a great blocker either for Mason Taylor. Like it's not something he was great at. Like his footwork was fine, but he had some problems dealing with that. He's a little more agile behind the line, so there may be more versatility using him level one a little bit more, kind of doing that kind of stuff. I think you use him a little bit more underneath. As a receiving piece, I liked him. I think he'll translate. I think he'll go high in this draft. I think he could go early round 2. I don't think he'll go round 1, but he could. Like, I mean, he's well-rounded enough to do that. But for me, like, it just wasn't enough, man. It wasn't enough. Like running routes upright, there's not a lot of change of pace. There's some detail lacking. He doesn't set up his curls that much as a route runner. There's not a ton of nuance at the top of the route for me. He can flatten his routes well, though. He's got the bend to do it. You can see him really kind of break off routes, get back to the ball, create separation that way. So there's like a natural set for separation ability to his game. Just didn't feel special right now. I feel like Fannin has to win with a lot more creativity right now. Will Laporta stay, but I think he won't be able to pay anyone. He might be the odd man out. Yeah, I don't know. And I don't have a good answer for you, because I don't know. I have no idea, right? Like, so we'll find out because we just have to evaluate how those guys play when that time comes. You know what I mean? Like, when that sets itself up, where it's like, okay, do we bring the guy back when their contracts expire? Then I think we can better judge kind of where it's at. But I feel like for a lot of those guys, they're still going like this. At least the hope is. And all of those guys, I mean, Laporta I wouldn't say Laporta was like upward last year versus what he did his rookie year. But for where he's at in terms of his contract, like I still want to see it play out and see where it goes. Like if it keeps going like this, it's like, all right, well, hold up, maybe that would be the guy. But also, like I kind of want to see it play. Like I need to see the full picture still because just draft picks in general, especially for a guy like Laporta who's not a round 1 pick, but like draft picks in general, like you never want to judge guys after 1 or 2 seasons. So I'm trying to. I just need to see more, and then ultimately there will be some odd guys out. Just as of now, I don't know who that would be. And, you could say the same thing about safety, to be honest, right? Like Kirby Joseph, I fully anticipate going to get his extension. It sounds like that. But when it comes to Brian Branch, I would also want to give him extension right now. The problem is I just need to see more because now next year's going to be a big year for him. Right? Next year, it's like, dude, you're the guy. You're the starting safety. We can see it right now. There is no like what position you're playing. You're playing safety. We know that right now. So now next year, safety again, where you were great and then you had to go to the slot and things pull back a little bit. Let's just leave you at safety and see what that turns into. And if you're the best safety in football, it's going to be hard to say, hey, we're going to get rid of Brian Branch over this other guy who is good, but he wasn't the best safety in football. So I'm just going to let that thing play out. He's never dropped the ball. I don't think so. I think he's definitely dropped the football before, but I'm not mad at the way you think it, though. I think he's definitely dropped the football before, but I'm not mad at the way you think it, though. That's good. That's good. This class is their birthday cake. See, I was waiting for you to hop in here, fan man. Like, I was like, all right, he's just not here. That's cool. I put Chris Paul in one of these mocks. Dude's not in the chat. Like, this was the wrong day to do it. And I'll never do it again. That's just where we're at. Getting rid of Decker before Laporta. So, and then Decker's contract, right? He got the extension last year. So he's got to have 2 years left on his deal. And Laporta's got 2 years left on his deal as well. So like, neither of those would overlap for me, unless you're, Decker's got 2026, 2027. So the thing for Decker would be, getting off of him before his last year of his deal. So yeah, for me, that conversation. So yeah, that conversation would then come up like, okay, we're not moving to either one this year. That'll be his third year. It'll be the second to last. Well, it'll be the third to last year for Decker, but it'll be the third year for Laporta. See what they look like this season. See if there's drop off. I think Decker was awesome last year. I don't believe that. I think Decker took a step forward last year. I think Decker had one of the best years as a Lion last season. I thought he was amazing last season, and I thought he was such a good run blocker. He kind of put together such a full, well-rounded game last year. I thought that was one of the best seasons he's ever had as a Lion. So there's that. But then, so you let him kind of play out both this year. Then you let them play out next year, where you would then have to make your decision on Laporta. And that's where I could have that decision line up with Decker, because then that's when Decker has the biggest out for his deal. They're saying 6.2 in dead, 17.8 million saved. So then that final year of his contract, where it's like, okay, do we keep him on that deal? Do we move off him? Do we restructure it? Or do we just kind of get off him 1 year early? Maybe he has some trade value now. Maybe we get something for him. And then you make that decision to bring Laporta back when he's a free agent. So it's like, it's not ideal, but like at very least, I would want to be like 1 year out versus 2 years out before I make those decisions. And I think the Lions are probably thinking that way too. Like I'm sure they know, you know what I'm saying? Maybe they have a lean early, but it's also like you just don't know. Like, how are these guys going to grow? How's it going to get better? Because like I have no idea, man. I have no idea. I mean, remember, I just do think back. Remember Hawkinson's first game as a Lion when he went like insane, and then the rest of the year was like super quiet. It's like you just don't know how these dudes are gonna jump or not. Kirby Joseph, like for example, he's gotten so much better, and that's part of the reason I think it sounds like Kirby Joseph is gonna be resigned. Kirby Joseph got so much better. He got so much more well-rounded as a piece. He went from kind of this long guy that would take the football away, and he was like, kind of a chirpy safety. So all of a sudden, he became this dude. Can play man really well. He can play both safety positions. He'll hit guys. He'll step in the box. It's like, all right, he's really well-rounded. He's actually developing as a safety. So all of a sudden, you're getting to that point where it's like, okay, he's not kind of just one thing. Now he can kind of play both safety spots. But if you didn't have last year, if you made the decision on Kirby, even though you wouldn't have, but hypothetically, if you already made a decision on Kirby before last year, you wouldn't have seen him take that growth. And now you're like, well, wait a minute. Now he is one of the best. Now he might be the best safety in football because he can do all these things. So now it's like, yo, we would prefer to go somewhere else. Don't get rid of the best player at his position. Scorton, Pooh, Fannin, like chicken pot pie, 3 of my favorite things. Wait, okay. Like chicken pot pie, 3 of my favorite things. Are there 3 things in chicken pot pie? What 3 things are there? There's chicken. Is that the one with peas in it? Is that the one with peas? The green peas? Maybe. I don't know what's all in there. You're saying there's 3 things. There's got to be chicken. Is there like gravy in there? Gravy sounds good. There's probably got to be gravy in there. Yeah, this is crazy. What players would you move up for in the second round? So one guy that I would be willing to move up for, and I don't know the Lions will, I would absolutely be willing to move up for Braden Swinson. I would love the idea of moving up for Swinson. I think the idea of the Lions not getting a defensive end in the first round, which is very possible, but then also if they could jump up, maybe if they didn't have to, but I think they'd have to. Jumping up for a guy like Swinson is something that I would be all on board with. I'd be on board if the Lions shocked and took him at 28. I wouldn't be mad at it. I'd be like, oh, this is fun. I would be willing to trade up for Swinson. I think he fits incredibly well. So I would, and I feel like there's enough depth here where because of some of the unpolished to his game, he could drop into the mid 40s potentially, and then that could allow you to strike like a JT Tuimoloau could get above him, that kind of thing. So it could allow you to reasonably get from 60 instead of like 33. Like 60 to like 36 is just probably not going to happen. You'd have to give up like so much capital. So, but getting like from 60 to maybe the back end of the 40s could be possible. I would love to go up and get a Swinson. I would love to do that. That's okay. That is food though. That is food though. You know what I mean? It is food though. Okay. I didn't know that. Look at that. Learn something new. Okay. I think of where Glasgow struggled at worst move Glasgow in between Frank and Panay while putting Mahogany to the left. Yeah, and I think the issue, well, I mean, Graham always has had pass protection issues, so I don't know. You go back to what Graham was doing before this past season, that may help him, right? Like going back to putting him at the right guard, yeah, that may help him. But he had issues, 2 years ago in pass pro. That was still up and down. That said, though, like, yeah, Decker was awesome last year. So, like, I'm not even considering that. I would skydive from 4. Plus, like, I know they drafted Manu, but dang, bro, like, we had so many issues when Decker went out. I would skydive from 4 field if we took Swinson in the first. Dude, I'd be fired up, bro. I'd be fired up, dude. I'd be fired up. That I think he's one of those like sleeper names. Like you always trying to look for those dudes that are like, they're not gonna draft that guy. Like they're not considered first round players. And then the Lions kind of go a little bit off the radar and take him. That's one that I think would be an awesome fit. I think it'd be awesome. Like Scoring gets first round buzz, some, not a ton, but some. He should get first round. He should at least get some buzz there. I think if he was taken, if they went up and got him or they took him at the top, I'd be excited for it. I'd be happy. I think I had him at 7, right? But I felt like I could move him. I think I had him at 7. So he was up there. By the time you're on the clock, you might be taking edge rusher 7. Shoot, you might be taking further than that. Who else would I trade up? Let me see. It'd be fun. I know we brought him up yesterday. Jack Besh. Um, I think he'll fall a little bit. So I don't think you'd have to move that high. You may not have to move at all. I don't think it's a good receiver group, so I guess that could push him up. But say Trey Harris goes first. Very possible Trey Harris goes first. Trey Harris goes first. Torrey Horton maybe goes above him, which I wouldn't do it, but they're different styles, very smart receivers, so maybe that happens. They got Jack Besh drop a little bit. I'd be willing to take a swing on a Jack Besh. I would be willing to move up for a guy like that. I think he'd be a ton of fun. He's so versatile in what you do offensively. He's another one of those guys that's just tough. They got the backstory, this rugged. It's like, all right, it's fine to spot. This is a Lions kind of guy. So I'd be willing to move up to go get him too. And that would give you another weapon. I want to look more into Harold Fannin, before I get to these tight end rankings, kind of finish that one up because I'm curious to see where I land on him. He might be a second round guy. Like I think he could be a second round pick this year, but he also may be someone I'd be willing to take in the second round this year. Like I took him because I felt his value, but like, I don't know. I want to see where I get to with him. Do we think Trent Fraley, Hank's kid? Okay, I didn't know that. The OC at North Dakota State. Friendship with Gray Zabel is worth looking more into. Hank got the promotion. Maybe now he gets his pick. I don't know, man. Like, I hear what you're saying. See, here's the tough part about that question, because here's how I think about it. So, him being close to Gray Zabel, does that push Gray Zabel up? Right? Because if he knows Gray Zabel well, that wouldn't necessarily impact the opinion, or I wouldn't think of what you would have on the other lineman, right? Like, so if I take Donovan, say I take Booker, and I take Gray Zabel, put him in a bucket, like just because he works with him, that wouldn't change your opinion, I don't think, on the player. You would just have maybe more of a stronger conviction on what the player really is. So if you felt like, okay, Gray Zabel's guard 2 here, maybe that relationship doesn't necessarily move him up. It could move him down. It doesn't move him, but it just makes you feel like, okay, I'm pretty sure about the character we're going to get. So I don't know. Maybe it gives them a little more insight, though. I'm sure it does give them more insight. And I'm sure he's involved in the process. Hank should be. Hank's always here. I don't know. That's interesting. I think first off, if Gray Zabel was there at 28, I'd be a little surprised. That's part one. Part two, that wouldn't shock me at all. Gray Zabel would not shock me at all. That makes a ton of sense. That flexibility would work out perfect. On paper, it would be perfect for the future to have a guy that can play anywhere, to have an offensive line that already moves everybody all over the place. He would fit in really well to that. He's athletic enough to fit into that. So stylistically, it'd be perfect, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Because I just say that because it's like, okay, but like, why would that elevate him over someone from another school, right? Like it shouldn't, because then I feel like you're not doing your scouting job correctly. Now you're just elevating guys because you have a connection with him. Like I wouldn't elevate a guy with a connection. I would only elevate him because he has that connection, and maybe, hey, this guy's character is better or something like that. You know what I mean? Like we know him more. But like from the whole scouting side of things, I don't think it would actually move my opinion. Because then I think I'd just be leaning on like, well, it just so happened that he worked with this guy. Because what if he worked with Donovan? It's like, all right, we take Donovan first. I don't know, but that is an interesting question. I haven't looked at running back. I've looked at some running backs. I'm not as deep into the running backs, like the back end as much, but I mean, a solid amount. It's not one of my heavier positions that I've went through, but I'm in a pretty good spot with running back. Pretty good spot. I could tell you about most of these guys, especially within the first 2 days for sure. A few towards the back end. It's the reason Donovan can't play center. Probably. Well, one. It's interesting. So, like, one, everything's going to happen a lot quicker. So there is that aspect. I think that everybody's going to go to his height. Like, first off, he is a little bit tall. I'll have to look back at my notes a little bit, because he did play guard. I don't think he played center with before he transferred, but he may have. I don't think he did. I think he played just guard before he transferred over to Ohio State. I mean, it's a different skill set. Let me see if I got something here. Let me see. Better take Booker. Yeah, Booker's my number one guard, but I think they could see Donovan fitting better for the scheme. Like Donovan, I think adds more versatility. Just it's easier versatility. You know what I mean? He would add a little more flexibility too. He could play tackle at the next level if you want him to. I wouldn't leave him there, but he could. So it does add some. You know what I'm saying? It does add some of that. Who are you taking at 28 if all three are available? Jihad, Scorton, or Zabel? If I was guessing, I think the Lions would take Jihad Campbell for sure. If I was sitting there, it would be between Jihad and Scorton. Because I know the Lions, I'd probably take Campbell out of that mix. I'd probably take Campbell. I think Campbell's upside of what he could be next to Jack Campbell could be special. I think you could have the two best linebackers in football there for a long time. And I think he has the flexibility that fits. So I'd probably rank it like Jihad 1, Scorton 2, Zabel 3. Scorton and Zabel's close though. That's close because if I look at let me see where I have my thing on Scorton. Because I think I have Zabel higher between the two. Okay, I have Zabel 3. I have Scorton. Oh my gosh. So I actually have Zabel 0.01 spots above Nick Scorton. 0.01. Yeah, they're like right next to each other. I mean, not above Scorton. I'm sorry. I have I have Zabel 0.01 spots above Scorton. Those guys are touching each other in terms of grades. So then it's about preference. And I guess then in that case I'd lead Zabel. Double Campbell's at linebacker would be nice. The two Kansas City merch would be fire. That'd be tough. I like oh man. Okay, Larson. Yeah, okay, you brought him up. Devin Neal, okay, Kansas, my nun guy from Rutgers and Hardquest Hunter. I like Hunter a lot. Hunter's my favorite of that group. Now, Devin Neal does work though. Devin Neal does work, man. I think that dude's got some juice to his game, which I like. But I think Hunter is massive sleeper. If I had like a sleeper right now, I'd give you it's Hunter. I thought he was a top 5 running back at one point. I think Hunter's fantastic. Is Za'Darius coming back or not? No. If I was to, I'm pretty like 95%, 99% sure he's not coming back. I wouldn't bet on it. Yeah, I wouldn't bet on it. Shoot, I can't remember what I was talking about earlier. Someone said something about taking Hairston at 60. I think that's crazy if he gets to 60. I think it's crazy. I mean, the dude can play football. Like, there's some knocks with him, right? He's a little bit undersized, kind of gets pushed off at sometimes. 2023 was great. He had some issues dealing in 2024 that he was playing through. Hairston's a heck of a football player, man. If the NFL lets that dude fall to 60, I agree. Take him at 60. Don't play around with it. Like, get that thing done. Keep it moving. Keep it moving, man. We're doing too much if we just don't grab that piece. Okay. You said when I said OC, Trent plays center as a junior, and Gray starting next to him at guard. Just want to be clear. Okay, I got you. Okay, offensive center. Got you. Trent plays center as a junior. Gray Zabel plays. Oh, okay. So his son. Wait, you said his son, right? Not his brother. So his son plays there. Now that'd be perfect for character. See, now that would definitely not change my, I think, opinion on the player as a grade wise, but it would definitely impact potentially how I feel about the person, how I feel about the kid, right? Because now, yeah, that's perfect. Like, yo, how is the dude? You can just talk to your son. That makes it much more clear. You know what I mean? I feel like that makes it much more clear and how that how you feel about him. Shit, I don't even think you'd be able to trade up to get Hairston. Because I don't think you'd be able to get that high from 60 to get Hairston. That dude might go before we pick. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that dude went before we picked. I hear the Trey Amos buzz. I would take Hairston first, but they're tight. But outside of Amos, like, I'm going Hairston, man. Hairston for teams will probably get the nod over Jahdae Barron, because Jahdae Barron, to me, he has like the Brian Branch type, but he's not as like awesome against the run, right? Taking on block, getting off blocks, that kind of the fiery. He doesn't have that as much, and the size is gonna be a little concerning. Hairston has some size concerns as well, but he takes the football away just like Jade does. Jade has great ball skills, so it's a little bit different. Someone could buy that style a little bit more. You're sold on Isaac Tesla? Dude, come on, man. Come on, man. Hank is a very good online coach, and if he says take his guy over the other guy, I'm in. Hey, that's what I would. That's what I would think. That's what I would think. All right. Chat, man, I think we did it, man. We hit on what we need to hit on. Give me 1 second. My plan is this weekend to start dropping rankings. You know what I thought about? I don't want to do one video like everybody's in the same video. It's gonna take forever. It's gonna be like a super long video. So instead, I'm thinking I'm gonna make like one video, but like 8 segments, and just cut all the segments and drop them individually. That way, there's like a 10-minute video on the safeties, 10-minute video on linebackers, that kind of deal. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking I'm gonna do. Okay. Also, I don't think we've seen anything else come out from like what like I don't think we've gotten any more news since the Brad Holmes thing. I think it's been pretty quiet. I've listened to some stuff, but nothing's like sounded, like newsworthy. Like we heard a couple things like people think we might draft. I've heard Derek Harmon keep getting thrown into the mix. He'll be interesting when I put the D line one out because I'm a big fan of Derek Harmon. I'm a big fan of Harmon. I wonder a little bit about his fit with the Lions, but I'm a big fan of him because he can get moved around against double teams just by the way that he positions himself. Linebacker next. I'm hoping I'm going to drop them all kind of on like the same one or 2 days. Like I'm just going to record it all at once, like as a batch, and then just drop them individually, so they'll all kind of come out within the same day. I think that's kind of what it's kind of what I'm after here. But I also think the Harmon conversation was interesting though, considering his background. Like that dude is a tough player, got his body weight right, got after it as a rusher, did it all really in 1 year. He's still very powerful, uses his hands really well. I had more issues with his football intelligence, but people do like the feel for the game, and I think he has a really good feel. You see this as shed blocks. I think positionally he does a lot of things well. I think he does a lot of positional things well, and he has critical factors that are all plus categories. I don't think he has an elite trait there, but they're all plus. They're all good. So I think Harmon's got back in a first round potential. I think he definitely does. I think that's a super interesting conversation. Plus, he has the numbers too. 17.6% pass rush win rate. That's crazy. Played up and down the line. I don't think he's like you might not want him as like your true nose tackle, but like maybe. You know what I mean? I don't know. All right. Anyway, we're going to end it here. I'm going to finish putting those things together. We'll get those things out soon. And yeah, I think that's it. I don't actually, let me check this real quick. I forgot what I was going to check. I wanted to check to see if there's any kind of walk the mountain drafts coming up that we could try to get one of those in. Starks, Harmon, and Tesla first repick. Who says no? How are you going to pull that off? You definitely trading. You definitely, it's a big trade up. Okay, let me see if there's anything in here. What's today? Today's the 18th. So there's one at 8:20 tonight. You got 12 teams in there. Okay. And then there's one on the 22nd. That's not good. So there's one tonight at 8:20. That could be interesting. I'm gonna join it. We'll see if we do it. I'm gonna join it though. We'll see if it happens. If it does, you'll see it over here live. I'm gonna get out of here. Appreciate y'all joining. Maybe back at 8:20.